Last week was an Interview-palooza on the channel. From Sunday to Friday, we put out 6 interviews. It was an interview spectacular. And today we are going to look back on the week, the interviews, and your reactions to it all. Next on the Hair Metal Guru.
The Hair Metal Guru, from Warren to Crew. The Hair Metal Guru, never forget Charlie too.
Welcome to the Hair Metal Guru. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. And holy shit, you got my buddy Patrick here, who was so instrumental in setting up all of the interviews that you saw last week. So today we're going to talk about it all. With that, Patrick, welcome back to the show.
How the fuck are you?
Good, man. Fucking good.
Fucking
It was, it was a long week trying to get all that shit edited, but we have never done anything like that, and I was actually shocked at how well it went because I think, like I told you before we hit record, I was like, fuck, if I put out an interview every day, is it gonna be like too much? Or are people gonna be like,
yeah.
hey, that's enough? But it went really well.
We talked about in other excuse me videos that we have quite a stockpile of interviews.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we started putting feelers out after the Ricky Rocket interview. And we put out a lot of feelers, and out of nowhere, it seemed like every day for a while, 2 or 3 people were responding saying, hey, I'll do it. I'm in. When do you want to do it? So rather than just bombard people with interviews every day, we kind of have been putting one out a week. And we came up with an idea to have a Interview-palooza and pop a bunch of them out. And I couldn't be more happy with the performance of it. I thought it went really well. So I really hope just from the comments alone, I think it went well.
And so you're right. And so now, I had a 2-week period where I had 12 interviews in 2 weeks. Like an interview almost every day. And then, on some days I was doing 2 interviews. So when originally we were like, oh, we'll put out 1 interview a week. So that's why they were getting so stockpiled. And we were like, fuck, well, we need to get some out there. And I always feel like I want to do right by the artist. So I was always emailing artists and saying, hey, I'm so sorry it's taken this long. They've all been really gracious. Hey, no worries. So that's why we put out 6 in a week, and now we're getting caught up. We still have kind of a bundle, a stockpile left, but yeah, the reaction to them was great. They're all over 2 or 3,000 views, which is really solid. So yeah.
Well, I thought it would be kind of fun to go through each interview. We'll talk a little bit about it, and then I've taken a selection of comments from your viewers, like we promised we were going to do for folks, because people really liked that you were responding through the comments, that we took some selections of comments from each of the interviews, and I'd love to have you talk about it. But one thing that I think we should address off the top, we talked a little bit ahead of time about the prep that you do. We talked in another video in the Road to 10,000 video, which we are still on, by the way. And as of today, we are at 7,600. So just in a 2.5 week, 3-week period, we have added 600 subscribers to this.
Actually, hey, it just clicked again. 7,640.
Wow. Thank you, folks. That is freaking awesome. So this channel is growing every day. We promised we were going to respond to viewer comments, so we will be doing that throughout each of these recaps over these interviews. And obviously we start, Anthony, with a little bit of controversy, because during this process, an accusation from another channel called In Full and Bloom came out, in which they accused you of using AI to create your interview questions. First off, personally, fuck you. That's bullshit. It's not true. So I think your fans would love to have you respond to that.
Yeah, and so I posted something on X on Twitter, and I'll paraphrase. I said, it's hard for me to see people who post stuff, you know, like it might be album reviews or something. And I said, and I didn't say any names, but I said it's hard for me to see people post stuff that I know is AI written. You know, you can kind of tell. And when people pass it off on their own, but I made no accusations and I just left it at that. Well, the Full in Bloom channel, which is a channel I fucking love. I watch so many, I don't even know what the guy's name is, but I watch so many of his interviews. He responds on X and he says, "Yeah, I know what you mean." And he goes, "And I also hate it when interviewers use AI to write all their questions." So he didn't say, "Hey, you," but so I responded back. I said, "You're not stating it directly, but it seems like you're implying something." And he never responded and has never responded. I do not use AI to write my questions. I do use AI for research. For example, I'll say, "Hey, give me a chronological list of every album that this person has performed on." You know, if it's something that if it's somebody that I don't know every little thing, just so you, and then once I get that list, I go, oh, I see that this person produced it. I'm going to ask a question about, and then I write my questions based on that. No, I do not. And I think if you watch my interviews and how I interact, like obviously I'm not sitting there going, "Okay, what can you tell me about this?" You know, I don't do that. So anyway, Full in Bloom, man. Yeah, I'll be honest. I love your channel. I kind of lost some respect for that dude with that because, I don't know how he's watching. Hopefully, people don't, but I do not use AI for questions. I do use, like, obviously when you research, you're going to use Google or AI to do research. Everybody has to do research. You're
Right.
not just going to ask questions from the top of your head. So anyway, yeah, I was really disappointed in that, but the guy still has a good channel, and hopefully people trust that I go about this the right way. Okay.
Right.
So yeah.
So the first interview that we released was with Johnny Gioeli. Uh, Full disclosure, that took place probably a month and a half ago,
Yeah, about.
about that. So, uh, great interview, did great numbers with the folks. We're very interested in it. It's continuing, here a week after its release to still continue to see some high views from your viewers and your subscribers. Uh, Bubbles the Chimp 13 says about that video. This dude's now providing cover for the Scam Brothers. Nice going deleting my comment on the GOLE's tooth whitening scam. They screwed senior citizens and you're covering for it.
Uh, Number one, I didn't delete any comments. I'm not saying that I've never deleted. I've had people who have made like gross or maybe even sexual things, shit, maybe even about Mariah. Or there has been times, but I never deleted this comment. And I'll be honest, I had completely forgot about that. But now that like when you told me about that comment, I'm like, shit, there was a scandal where the Gioeli brothers had some business. I don't know all the details. I do remember hearing about it, but I did not delete that comment, and I think I told that guy so. But yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't know. Like, okay, I do ask some very tough questions at times, some things that can get personal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is not it. I never go into an interview wanting to make an artist look bad.
No,
I want to know about their career. I want to know the questions that have I've always wondered about, and that I think fans have always wondered about. And you know, if that really had nothing to do with his music career, who I don't know all the details. So, but yeah, it
right.
was it was kind of.
It, we'd usually talk about interviews ahead of time and we talk about questions that we want to make sure and hit or make sure that if we think of something that the other one knows about it. I would never have brought this one up because it's, what's it going to do? You know, what's it going to do? So,
Yeah. And you know what? These guys are gracious and they come on your channel and to I'm not going to be the, hey, I'm going to throw a gotcha question out,
Right.
something that is completely like I did ask him about the lawsuit.
Hmm.
You know, he's suing over his music that's been used in like movies and stuff. I asked him about that. I thought that was a relevant question, but that other thing, no.
Yeah. Max Hardcore 5845 says about the Johnny Gioeli, another awesome interview guru. Johnny has to be one of the most charismatic guys in metal. Makes me think I have in all the interviews I've done, I've never seen somebody so high energy. He was high energy and a lot of fun. So I think it was a great interview.
I think him, Reggie Wu was high energy, but you would not know. That dude is like what?
I think
57,
58. Yeah.
58? Um, he was fucking jacked, uh, energetic. I mean, that dude is absolutely right. A ball of energy. I was like, holy shit. Like you can see that guy's kind of a force of nature, and you can see like he's got himself into places with his charisma and his personality.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tuesday we went into, or yeah, Tuesday we went into, or Monday we went into Jeff Worley from Jackal. Jackal's first appearance even being mentioned on the Hair Metal Guru YouTube channel. Got a lot of comments from people about just how great it was to see Jackal getting mentioned. Where are you with Jackal?
I'm a big fucking fan. I remember a bunch of us we had one friend who was 21, the rest of us weren't 21, and we got a hotel room one night and got a bunch of beer and stuff. And one of the guys that was there is like, "Hey, there's this new band, Jackal," and I think I'd remember seeing like maybe the ad in magazines, but I don't remember knowing and he's like, "They got this fucking this chainsaw song." And so we're listening to this, and I was like, holy fuck. Uh, Fell in love with that debut album. Still think they're awesome. And they're one of the best live shows I've ever seen. I think I've seen them like 3 times. Unbelievable. Like I said that in the interview, and I wasn't bullshitting. Like if you have to see Jackal live. So do I have every album? I mean, in later years, I've bought in some of the stuff that he mentioned an album called Relentless that I have that is real. I don't have everything, but I do love Jackal. And wasn't he like one of the funnier guys that I've ever interviewed?
I think it was impossible to not within a minute or two of listening to him talk become fully engaged. And I've said this before, not to ride your nutsack and say, my God, this was like the greatest interviewer of all time, but you have a way with these people that you engage them to where it feels like we're all sitting there with you. And with him especially, I felt like I was in that dark room that he was in, and we were just talking some shit, and it was great.
Yeah.
And I hope he would be
Thank you.
somebody that it would be fun to revisit. A lot of people say that they put these on while they're at work or they're on a long car ride. And there were a lot of comments from your viewers that were saying this will get watched a lot of times by me. So Jason Goad 1084 said about the Jeff Worley interview. This was a great interview. Jeff's hilarious. This channel just keeps getting better and better. And Nikki 6 3GQ said the guru's killing it. However, would love to see the guru wear eyeliner in the upcoming videos. It's a must for a hair metal guru.
You know what? If the fans ask for it, I actually, you know what? What would they do if I fucking just showed up, just totally glammed out?
It could happen.
I used
It
to have,
very
I
well
used,
could happen.
I used to have a wig. I did dress up as Paul Stanley once for Halloween when I was teaching, and I actually had some students who were like I had a bunch of makeup, and they did my Paul Stanley makeup. It was fucking hilarious.
That's awesome.
But
A1 Gindaloon said about the Jeff Worley interview, Anthony, what a perfect surprise interview that I didn't even know I wanted. Jackal's an amazing band that is kind of the lost band. This was so great. I'm going to listen to it another 4 times minimum. Thank you for letting Jeff ramble and guide him in so many great directions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He was you know, and I've said this about, and it's not just him, but he was a guy like shit. You get done and you're like, fuck, if we were just two guys who just met up, like you'd feel like you'd want to be friends with that guy. Like
Right.
he just had that kind of personality. Not no, not everyone does, but there's been a number of guys that I've just even after we've done the interviews, you know, we'll like email a little bit and chat. So yeah, he was awesome.
Awesome. Tuesday brought Marc Ferrari from Keel and Cold Sweat, an interview that was done quite a while ago. And he was actually one of the first people we ever reached out to, and he responded pretty quickly. And I know you had an afternoon of talking to Marc Ferrari. What do you remember from that?
Uh, at how different he was than I expected him to. He was like all business like and you know seemed kind of straight edge, which was fine. But you know you're envisioning like this guitar fucking woohoo, you know, the right to rock and shit and then like you know you find out in the research that he wrote this book Don't Dilly Dally Silly Sally, a little kid's book. I mean, it was just hard to envision him like, you know, partying with Pantera in the 80s like he talked about. But, you know, super down to earth, super nice, but completely different than what I thought he was going to be.
OU812FU said, have to say the two best music type channels out there are Billy Corgan's and yours. Fantastic guests and interviews. Very impressed with the amount of interviews you've had and with who. Keep them coming. While Dan MMI800 said, my head teacher at Vacation Bible Camp took away my Walkman and Keel's Right to Rock cassette circa 1984-85 while I was at Turtle River State Park in North Dakota. I eventually got it back, but I knew I wasn't supposed to bring tapes, let alone metal tapes. So no one to blame but myself. I found out the hard way that I did not have the right to rock.
When people take the time to like write like that kind of story, I'm just like legitimately flattered and just like wow, people watch what you do and they want to share it. They want you to know their story. And I hear, you know, the person from North Dakota, I'm like, and then the person before that who said like, oh, the best, like this is the best channel with Billy Corgan. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like here, Billy Corgan gets like hundreds of thousands of views, which just that anybody would say that, um, you know, is so mind blowing to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because I never would have dreamed, you know, that somebody would say that about this little old channel.
Ernest Dyson 7979 said about the Mark Ferrari interview. Gene Simmons found all these bands and wanted to work with them, but none of those bands ever got anywhere with him.
You, I asked Marc Ferrari this. I said, did you ever feel like Gene overextended himself?
Mhm.
You know, like he's producing, he's doing movies, he's doing Kiss. He's spending, you know, like was it Mark? Because I've had a couple people that have had albums produced by Gene. He's spending time on the phone doing, you know, and so you just wonder. And Gene Simmons, everybody acknowledges has an amazing work ethic, you know, and the guy knows his shit. But you just kind of wonder if maybe he had said, look, you know, I am focused on you guys and I'm not doing the movies and the other stuff, which obviously he had to do Kiss, but you just kind of wonder if maybe things didn't get as much attention as they needed.
And I think it was also a time when Gene's coming off, Kiss is not selling a craptastic amount of records. Paul's running Kiss, and Gene's just trying to find some foothill to keep his life going at the pace it was going. So I agree with you. I think he may, in my personal opinion, I think he was spread thin, and I think the quality of his work wasn't great.
And who doesn't do that? You know, who like you were on top. And you know, you're like, I mean, obviously Kiss was still doing fine in the 80s, but you know, they weren't as so you're like, you know, Gene, and I think a lot of these guys, you're like, well, I want to find another way to stay on top. Maybe if I become a movie star, I'll be on top. Maybe if I produce bands, I'll be on top. I mean, like nobody wants to go down the mountain that you've already climbed.
Right, right. Wednesday, we had a first in that we had a professional producer slash engineer slash mixer, which this guy, when I found him online, I went, wow, he has touched everything.
Yeah.
And his name was Mike Fraser. He was our Wednesday interview, and I gotta say, I thought it was fantastic. What do you remember from talking with Mike Fraser?
It was so cool to hear like the behind, like you never get that perspective. What's it like, working with the artist and trying not to be a fanboy. I remember him saying like yeah, I'm producing Jimmy Page from Led
Hmm.
Zeppelin. Like okay, hey Jimmy, don't do it that way. You should do it this way. And I always wondered about like how do you fucking do that with some of these big superstars? He talked about being starstruck when Steven Tyler and Joe Perry come walking in. But then he like talked about doing doing Blue Murder and how that project didn't do as well as he thought it would.
Right.
And
And
yeah,
being there when Tommy Lee got the was where he's arguing with
yes, like
about
holy
the
fuck.
fucking sex tape. Great stuff.
And I mean, I'll promote this song again. The song Gasoline by a band called The Wild out of Canada. He mixed that. And I told him at the beginning of the interview, I said, that's my favorite song of the last year. And he mixed it. And he actually, when I released the interview, he sent out an email to me and their singer because I would like to have him on the channel. Anyway, but yeah, it was just cool getting that perspective. It was the first time I'd interviewed somebody who I think is the first time that I interviewed somebody who wasn't like a musician and could say, "Hey, here's how these things are made, and here's like, my role in it."
At RJC7289 says, how he goes from janitor to record producer is unreal. I guess if he can polish a turd in the toilet bowl, he can polish a turd on analog recording tape. Laugh out loud.
That's hilarious, and I'm glad you because like that is like well, he's Canadian, but
Mhm.
the American fucking dream. He's like, you know what? I love music. I'd like to work with bands and shit like that. Uh, I apply to these places. They say we don't need any help, but we need a janitor. He's like, fuck it. I'll go be a janitor. And I'll stay there and I'll do extra and I'll help. And he
Right.
does that until somebody says, you know what? Yeah, you can help me out. And then he just keeps taking every little opportunity until all of a sudden, like Aerosmith notices, like, wow, this kid's pretty good at that. And then like
And it explodes. Yeah.
I love that his attitude is like, fuck it. I wasn't too good to be the janitor. That was one of the most amazing stories that I think has happened on the course of this channel was that.
Absolutely. Vampire Jack 10 asked within the Mike Fraser video, hey Guru, do you like heavy metal or heavier metal bands like death metal, black metal, industrial metal, etc.? It could be an interesting video.
And thank you for that question. And I won't say that I like I loved what the heaviest stuff that I found. Like I love 80s Metallica. I really do. I can get into stuff like that. I can, like I don't know if Rob Zombie's heavy, but like I can get into some of that industrial stuff. I don't know that I can get into like the Cookie Monster vocals, stuff like that. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but I do get into heavier metal, Judas Priest, Metallica. I don't know that I've gotten into like death metal or things like that, but I'm open to fucking trying it out.
Thursday, arguably one of the, in my opinion, the most captivating interviews was with Alan Niven, the manager of Guns N' Roses from their first records, along with a longtime manager of Great White. Um, Very interesting guy. His book, just for everybody who didn't know, has not actually been released yet.
Ah,
It's been put off a few times. So if you've gone looking for it in stores, that's why you're not finding it. But Alan Niven and you spent an hour and a half together. Talk to me about Alan Niven.
was he one of the more original guys? He's got that crazy accent. There was sometimes I felt like oh shit, like I better not make him mad. Like you know, you but you can see um why he comes off as an authority figure. You know, you can see how he would work his way to the top of something. But I could, you could see why, you could see how maybe like Guns N' Roses at some point would go like, all right, you know, he's not going to be that guy who kisses your ass
Right.
and tells you you're doing everything right. He's going to tell you when you're fucking up. And when you're a band, or anybody, you like people to kiss your ass. So you can see why, Axel and he said, Axel and Doug Goldstein and Michelle Anthony. Doug Goldstein was their tour manager. Michelle Anthony was their lawyer. He thinks they colluded with Axel to get him removed as the manager. But definitely an interesting guy. He had one of the more shocking. I think I maybe had known this, but when he just leaned in and he said, I think Jack was scared I was going to find out that he'd been having an affair with my Swedish wife for 13 years. I was like, okay, didn't know we were going to go
Remote
there,
discovered. Yes.
but let's go there. And it was cool to hear, you could tell he had this affinity for Izzy Stradlin and talked about how, once he was removed as a manager, then Izzy was out. And I wish we had discussed more, but after Izzy left Guns N' Roses and Alan Niven was fired from Guns N' Roses, he actually did manage Izzy Stradlin for a period. I don't think we talked about that time as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He-
the day I interviewed him, and you hear it at the beginning, his book was supposed to come out the next day. And now it's been pushed, like now I think they're talking October. So I don't know what the holdup is. But Alan Niven was an interesting guy.
Gave probably the most extensive interview about Great White's history, which I thought was fascinating. And I thank you for that because it's just not out there. And he really went deep on that. And, glad to hear that he reconciled his relationship with Jack Russell. That's huge in life to reconcile if you can.
Yep.
And Rodna Rose said, Psycho City is a banger. That's the last great album of Great White. You a fan of Psycho City?
I am a fan of Psycho City. It's been a while but I think when you talk to Great White fans, that's like the album that people, like obviously you're gonna get Once Bitten and you're gonna get Twice Shy. I kind of like the earlier grittier albums. But I think Psycho City is like maybe the most universally lauded album from that band. Everybody talks about that. And it came out when they were kind of on the downswing when grunge was hitting.
Yeah, I was jazzed as hell that he talked about Sail Away. Not a popular opinion, but that's my favorite Great White record,
Yeah.
followed very closely by Can't Get There From Here. Uh, Jonas Lindquist, 69, said, interesting interview, although I suspect there's more to the story than Alan might be willing to admit or see. That said, I completely agree that Izzy, just like Steve Clark was for Def Leppard, was the kind of ingredient you simply couldn't do without.
And maybe even Tommy Skio from Tesla,
Tesla, yeah,
and I love all of those bands, but I think rhythm guitarists are underrated when like the lead guitarist gets all they're the flashy and all that shit. But the rhythm guitar is often the backbone of the song. Those catchy, simple riffs that will never leave your head, I think are usually the best parts of songs, and a lot of times that comes from those important fucking rhythm players.
exactly. Anthony, we built Interview-palooza around one interview in particular. And for the very first time, we actually did a little bit of teasing of that interview for the whole week leading up to
Yep.
Our interview with former Janie Lane and Warrant keyboardist Shawn Zavodney. And I think a lot of people should know that we spent a lot of time working to get Shawn to interview with you,
Yep.
and he did. So we want to thank him extensively for that because that was not something that I think he was knew he was going to talk about.
Yep.
And he was willing to go there and he was honest and told the truth. So applause to him. Definitely a lot of controversial things he talked about in that interview. Leading up to that interview and sitting down that day to talk to him, where was your head at as far as what you wanted to accomplish?
That interview went so far beyond anything I ever thought that was going to happen. I figured, um, he was in that band Def Con, and Def Con released their album this year. And I thought, well, obviously we have to talk about his career. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to get him to talk about some Janie Lane stuff. And most of the interview ended up being about Janie Lane. I thought we'd hit on it for a little bit. Obviously it was a part of his career, but he even said, he goes, well, Janie is a huge part of my music career. And he answered things and went into more detail about his drinking, about the sexual assault accusation, um, about, like the difficulty. But you could tell he was a friend of him. You could tell. He kind of he kind of came off a couple times. And I'll just be, I have, there's a lot of addiction in my family. Okay. Like aunts, uncles, my my sister has had her issues, and when when you have a loved one who is constantly battling addiction and let's be honest, constantly causing problems for you. Uh you love that person, but you also at times fucking hate that person. You could tell there was, he'd be like, he'd say like, well, they were sick of it, man. Like you could tell he had at his own times where he was like, fucking A. I'm tired of going up on stage and having to cover for you. I'm tired of having a plane ticket to go and then having it canceled because you're in a bar drinking. You could tell that he loved him, but also had gone through so many difficult times. And I relate to that. And the way he opened up about it, I could never thank that guy enough. I That was one of my favorite interviews that I've done, and one of the most heartbreaking because you walked out of that, going Janie Lane. You love that guy as a musician, but you and I kind of talked about this out off of the channel. Is that he did a lot of shitty things.
I think it was a fantastic interview, and I think that if you were going to have a notebook of here is the best interviews that I've ever conducted, this better fucking be in it because it was great. It's that being said, I think people look at interviews two ways. Wow, that was entertaining and that was fun, or wow, that was intense.
Yeah.
This is obviously more in the intense side.
Yep.
It was a fascinating look into a time that a lot of us don't hear about because people don't want us to know about it. And it's understandable.
Yeah.
Kudos to Shawn Zavodney for being that real about it, as to what you just said. I love the man. He was a great friend. He tried to come back around a couple times to look, but there's another side of Janie who was my friend. And I totally understood that the whole time. The hard part, I think, for listeners of that interview is just like I said, peeling back the layers of the onion and seeing that, wow, this guy went through a lot and he created a lot of problems for people. And I think it also gives a basis now for people to understand a little better why Warrant deserves the right, even though I've said before on the channel, I'm not a huge fan of Robert Mason as the singer for
Yep.
Warrant, but I completely support why they do it. And I would never, ever say that Warrant should pack it up and put it away because they deserve every right to do what they did for what they went through.
Absolutely. And I hope that if anybody from Warrant would see this, or if they would I completely agree with you. There is no way they could have kept him in that band.
No,
He made it like four fucking shows. And before the Las Vegas disaster, Warrant does, yes, he wrote the songs, but they were a part of what created that. And you can't sit around and wait for an addict.
no.
Like when I was drinking, like, I completely get how people might have distanced themselves from me. Like, I was not fun to be with. For a few years, I was fun to be with, and then the fun stopped. And Janie Lane's addiction was far beyond. I was never, I didn't have to drink every day. I didn't detox to the point where I felt like I was dying. So my heart breaks for Janie Lane, but I completely get Warrant going forward, and they deserve to do everything that they've done. And so hopefully Warrant knows that. And I wanted to point this out. We had Maddie Lane comes on, and she has the perspective of what's it like to be a family member of Janie Lane.
Hmm.
We have Shawn Zavodney, who gives us the perspective of what's it like to be in Janie Lane's band at the end,
A coworker. Yeah.
a coworker and a friend because they were
Right.
friends years before that. And I'll just throw it, all we're missing is somebody from the original band Warrant to come on, and we don't have to sit and hammer at Janie Lane. Talk about the history of the band. Talk about your perspective. Talk about the good times. If
Right.
if you want me to agree to say, hey, we're not going to talk about Janie's drinking, that's fine. I just want to know your perspective of what it's like to be in Warrant and what it was like to build this thing that became so important to so many of us. Would I like for you to go into like the downfall a little bit? Sure. But I'll take what I can get because people want to know your story. And I think people want this channel. I think people want somebody on this to come on this channel and tell it here because this channel has done more for that band than I think almost any other channel on fucking YouTube.
We have also, for the viewers out there, we a lot of times I will get a message or somebody will address the channel or both of us saying, well, you guys should get somebody from this band or that band on there. We make a very strong effort to, and no more effort than we have ever made to get somebody from Warrant. We have contacted their management. We have contacted them through videos. They have commented on our videos directly and then don't respond when we try to put out a hand. Inside information has been shared to me that they're working very hard on potentially a documentary and a box set and all of these things, and they're looking to do it themselves, so they might be kind of keeping some information in. But then a week later, they do an interview with another channel. So rest assured that we continue to on a regular basis try to make contact and try to get someone because we know that's something that people want on this channel. I also want to add that there has been a large group of, not large, but there's been several people who have commented on this video with comments like what I'm going to share that are not the most comfortable comments, but it would be improper if we didn't address them. And that's something that we've committed to doing in answering questions is committing to answer even the ones that are not fun and happy. Catmandu for you says Janie gets a pass for the jagoffs who pulled a ditty on him, and the story comes from Bobby Brown, not from Huey and Dewey engaged in conjecture. Look what's going on with Bieber. So no matter how drunk and sloppy Janie got, so unless someone comes forward and says they saw a 10-year-old Janie as an alcoholic, we all need to, in capital letters, understand and capital letters accept Janie's alcoholism as a coping mechanism for getting drugged and diddied.
Yeah. I knew that the when Shawn Zavodney talked about what I asked him about the sexual assault allegations, and Shawn said what his opinion was that it didn't happen, and and I think his reasoning was that Janie, in his drinking years, would say things to garner sympathy. And I know from being an alcoholic and being around a lot of alcoholics, completely true. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I am saying that alcoholics will sometimes stretch a lot of the truth because we want everybody to feel sorry for us. And if they feel sorry for you, they'll leave you alone about their drinking. Oh, they had to deal with that. Okay, I'll let it slide, let it go. So,
In the discourse of working on my book,
yeah,
many of the people that I talked to, that I interviewed, and I discussed this with, share the same opinion as Mr. Zavodney.
yeah,
None of us were there, but it is in the depths that have been displayed from Shawn and Maddie and Bobby Borg. It is certainly not out of the scope to think that that accusation is potentially inaccurate.
right,
And it's furthermore, there's a lot of videos that are online, Anthony, in which people have put together their own little investigations and name people like Paul Stanley or Rob Halford. And there's a lot of Rob Halford comments in this video. What do you have to say to that?
yeah. I do remember watching one of those videos, and somebody made a pretty good point about how Bobby Brown, when somebody had interviewed her and mentioned the name Rob Halford, how she suddenly got like kind of frazzled, and they were like they kind of took that to the implication that it must have been Rob Halford. That's where a lot of people seem to be pointing the finger at. Um, and I will say this: there is that interview, and I'm sure you've heard it. He's
Mhm.
on the tour bus. He's talking to some radio station guy, and the radio station guy says, "Hey, is there anything you don't want to talk about?" And he's like, "Nah, you can talk about anything you want. I've been through this. I've been through that. I've been raped." He just kind of throws it out casually. The interviewer doesn't push back on it or doesn't ask anything. So, for him to say that, like, and he appears to be sober, but drunk people can sometimes be drunk and appear to be sober. So, and Shawn Zavodney did, after he said, "I'm practically 100% sure that wasn't true," he acknowledged that shit like that happens. So, you know, I don't know.
We're
I
never going to know.
Yeah, we're never gonna know. And I don't want to point the finger. And I'll ask you this: do you wish or do you think that Bobby Brown should come out and name the person? Because I think she's implied that she knows the name.
Bobby has said she does and that she doesn't because obviously for legal reasons she doesn't want to get sued. And it's the same thing as when that actor kid Corey Feldman had said, "I'm not going to name my accuser or the people because they would then have libel against me." At the end of the day, it either happened or it didn't. And the only piece that aggravates me is when people throw names out there based on internet sleuth
Yeah,
videos.
yeah,
It's kind of irresponsible.
yeah,
And, if it came out tomorrow that it was some guy who's been dead for 20 years and it's not Paul Stanley and it's not Rob Halford, these people don't go back and go, "Hey, I was wrong."
yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the internet for you. But I just, knowing what I have learned through my book piece and through these interviews, my personal opinion is it didn't happen. But everybody's allowed to their own opinion, and at the end of the day, I don't think we're ever going to hear it, who did it, if they did it.
And you hear Sean Sabat, and this is just about the drinking thing. Like yes, a traumatic event, in my opinion, can change the course of your life and maybe lead you to make some bad decisions. but it seems readily apparent that far before Janie was an up and coming rock star with Warrant, that alcohol was his issue long before that.
Yeah. That it was
So
the worst in Ohio.
yeah, that's what he said. He said he felt like it was worse in 85 before he was in a big band and had people trying to keep him on the straight and narrow. So I think alcoholism was going to be his issue regardless of whether that did or did not happen. I don't know if it did or did. I hope it didn't.
I hope it didn't too.
So
And Chris Adams, 6657, a longtime viewer and a really good dude. Chris, I hope you're doing well, brother.
yeah.
Wow, I knew Janie had his demons, but this gave me a little closure info on his life, which is what ultimately we wanted from this. As painful as all this was to hear, my respect for everyone along for the ride with him. I also have been teaching technology STEM for 25 years, but I wish I would have been out rocking and rolling on the side. Great interview, and thank you, Mr. Zavodney. Chris Adams is a good dude, people, and if you know Chris on Twitter, he's a really good dude.
That yeah.
Vista Light said, I spent time in that Akron area back in the 80s. All I knew of DEF CON was they were a three-piece who were an excellent cover band. The other thing that I remember people saying about the band is that the drummer was setting up before a show, went to sit on the drum throne without looking, and ripped off his nutsack because the padded seat part wasn't attached yet. I don't know if it's true, but that's what the story that went around town was. There was one or two really good original bands from that scene who could have made it if they only got their shit together a couple of years earlier.
Even Shawn Zavodney, like he talked about how talented DEF CON was. But you know, he said the thing that separated people is the songwriting. You know, you needed a Janie Lane or somebody who could sit down and fucking craft something. And I do want to pick up that DEF CON CD. I have it fucking sitting in a cart. There is a website where you can buy it. I want to buy it because it sounds really good what I've listened to. But you know, it struck me when he said you could tell the guys who were different. Janie Lane was different.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I mean, like his songs are what made Warrant stand apart from everybody else.
The last comment I have for you about this video is one in which even the person who wrote it says he thinks it would be unpopular. But Wanda Penderer 4180 said, this will probably be an unpopular comment, but this guy, Shawn Zavodney, pissed me off. The fact that he can laugh about the allegations that Janie made regarding being abused in the early years made me sick. Whether it was true or whether it wasn't, it isn't for us to judge. The fact is that it happens and it's been happening with no accountability for decades, which he at least acknowledged that it happens. He strikes me as more of an opportunist than a friend, a follower and definitely not a leader. And if I were Maddie and Taylor, I'd steer as far away from this fraud as humanly possible. You can't say that you were Janie's friend and then laugh because you knew it would have a bad outcome in the same breath. Sorry. I appreciate you, Guru. This one just rubbed me the wrong frickin' way.
Well, I appreciate you saying that at the end, but I completely disagree. And here's why. When you hang out with again, when you hang out with an alcoholic or an addict for so many years, you have been lied to so much. You have been fucked over so much by that addict. If you work with them, if they're a loved one. So that's why you learn to laugh at the sadness of the situation. You know, like somebody says like, "Oh, well, I drank because this happened to me." And you're like, "Fuck. You know what? I've heard all of them. I've heard every fucking lie, every excuse." You know, and he would remember he said after the Vegas show in '08, yeah, Janie called me. And Janie's like making an excuse and Shawn starts to laugh because you know he'd heard all
All of it
so
before.
all of it before. So it's not like he was, hey, I'm laughing at my friend's misfortune. He's laughing at all of the scenarios that he's replaying in his mind. And I can do that too with addicts in my family. It doesn't mean that I don't love them, but I can laugh sometimes at when people go, "Oh, well, you should do this or do that for that loved one." And you'd be like, "Do you know how many fucking times I have?
Right.
You know how many fucking times I got lied to and taken for money and shit like this?" That's why you can laugh about it, because sometimes you've loved that person so much and got hurt so much, it's almost funny and
Right.
it doesn't detract from your love for them. But that's why he could laugh about it. I have no ill feelings towards Shawn Zavodney for anything that he said or did in that interview.
I also think there's a level of bravery that it took to come on here and tell that story, knowing full well that people would say exactly these things about it. So we had a pretty successful week. And, obviously the aim on this channel is to bring really engaging videos to the hard rock and heavy metal community and hair metal community. And I think we accomplished that. And I think that that's pretty cool. But we definitely would love to hear everybody's thoughts and who are some folks, obviously, when you put it out there, who do you guys want to see on the channel? It's pretty hard to get, David Lee Roth on the channel, and it's pretty hard to get Brett Michaels on the channel or CC DeVille. These people we try, but they're very difficult. But who are some people, because we love to hear who people want to hear from.
And I won't say a name but we are starting to see that even rock stars are starting to seek us out a little bit. Had some people reach out and message us and express an interest in coming on. Some fairly decent sized names. So I've said it before. I want this to be the place that you can come and tell your story and get into the nitty gritty of it and the good and the bad, because so many of these rock stars, they have a story to tell, and I don't think there's, yeah, like Jason Green does stuff like this, but you don't need to be massive to come on this channel. You just have to be a part of this scene, and come on and we'll provide the format and come on and tell us about it. So
Yeah. Well, kudos to you, brother, because I think you did a great job and a lot of work, people. This takes a lot of work, from editing these to the research to making the thumbnail for them to getting them published. It's a
yeah,
lot of work. And
yeah,
Anthony, you did a great job, brother.
I appreciate it. And Patrick does most of the setting up of the interviews, most of the contacts, all of that initial work. So thank you to I would have, there's no way I get all these fucking interviews without you. No fucking way.
Well, I appreciate it, brother.
All right. Hey, yeah, go in the comments. Tell us what you thought maybe of tonight's discussion. Maybe if you have any other thoughts about any of the interviews that we did. And yes, we do want to know, like, who do you want to see interviewed? Obviously, we think about some of the big names, but hey, maybe there's some more obscure names or from bands that maybe we've talked about but haven't had on the channel. Let us know. And hey, like, subscribe, what the hell, ring the bell. And until the next video comes out, my name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. Take care of yourselves. And they call him Patrick. Sexy bitch over there. All right. Take care.